Andy B here from Christians Against Poverty in Bradford, and we've had some great guests and we are not done yet, so stick around. We're here till 5 p.m. Interviewing all sorts of lovely people from here. We've had people who've used the service, we've had people who have helped them use the service, we've had people who support people who support people. It's been a really, really good day, and we've got many, many good guests yet to go. I'm including my newest guest. Hello, Liz.
Hi there.
I got your name right.
You did, yep.
Brilliant. See, that's a big plus for me.
I do answer to most things, but it is Liz, yeah.
You sound like me. Oh, you. See, I used to be a truck driver, and everybody called me Drive, which wound me up because Drive is not even like driver. So I actually had a registration plate with my name made up because, you know, Drive. I'm not Drive. I'm a person. So anyway.
There used to be a Liz, a Lizzie, a Lucy, and a Louise all in the phone team. So I just got very used to answering something that sounded vaguely familiar.
I went with a guy called Dave John, and I thought it was a joke. Is he a Dave or a John? He says, I'm neither. He said, but no one knows my real name. They started calling me Dave. Somebody called me John, then I was Dave John, and I don't even know what his name was actually, but we called him what he wasn't. But he answered. It's fine. So what do you do here at Christians Against Poverty?
So I'm a senior debt advisor here. So I've just had my 11-year CAP anniversary, and I love my department so much. I've been here the full 11 years, give or take maternity leaves and a nice brief stint with cancer last year, but back and good to go now. So I'm a senior debt advisor in the client setup team, which basically means that I gather all the initial information, draw up the initial budget, work out from the madness what the situation looks like and the best way for someone to look at dealing with their debts. And then once we've gotten all that sorted out, all the paperwork signed, we ship them off to what we call the long-term teams, which are the teams that get someone to debt-free at the end of it. Yeah. So I see lots and lots of initial problems, but I never get to see the end solutions because that's always the other teams. So I never get to see people going debt-free. I just send them on that journey.
But yeah, you're there to help them at the start of that journey then?
And I think, to be honest, I find it the most interesting because you see absolutely every kind of situation under the sun. I think before I worked here, I had an idea in my head of what people with debt looked like, or what kind of people have debt. And I think I can very, very strongly say there's no one type of person that has debt. You can have, £100,000 a year doctors that have, similarly large sums of debt. You can have people that are on benefits. You can have people that were doing, very sort of normal middle class people where it just takes one life problem to, it just takes one heart attack and suddenly, you lose your income, your life crumbles, There's just such a variety of people that are struggling. And you do see trends. There's people that are more vulnerable to debt, but as a rule, absolutely anyone can find themselves in debt. It's not it's not people making bad life choices. It's not, a certain demographic. Absolutely anyone can find themselves. All it takes is one life hiccup, and suddenly you're facing a situation that you have no understanding of, no way of dealing with.
I do remember the recession. I mean, we suffered 2009-10. I've mentioned it a lot of times today, but it's quite relevant where we are today. But we went into debt with business debt because the recession hit. Our overdraft was taken away as a business. We were growing, quite successful. Without an overdraft, we were sort of a bit stuffed, and it was really hard to navigate through that time. But one of the things that was encouraging was when I actually made a phone call it was somebody else because it was business debt. We rang up.
By any chance?
No, it was Payplan was the one we used.
They're who we signpost self-employed people to.
And they were really, really good because the bit that I understand about what you do is when we came to them, it's like, I don't know. I don't know. You're in this place of everything's sort of, all the control you had is gone. Yeah. And it's anything, a control that's there is sort of an illusion, and you don't know what to do, and it's very stressful. And then you sort of come with all this stuff.
It's personal to you, that's the thing. It's often people feel very guilty or very like they must have done something wrong or they're the only one suffering. And obviously, if you get a red letter through your letterbox, that will create a ridiculous amount of stress for you and worry and panic. Partly because it's your situation, and partly because you don't necessarily understand the system that is going through that. Whereas for us, it's, paperwork's my favourite. People might hate getting it through their letterboxes, but actually I love it because that tells me exactly what I need to know. And I know how a credit card versus council tax can collect on debt, what they can do, what they can't do, how they can word letters in a way that makes it sound like they can potentially do things that we will attend your property with the intention of seizing goods whether you are present or not. makes it sound like they can break into your house.
Yeah.
But they can't. They can have all the intention in the world, but if your door's locked and you don't let them in, they're not coming in. But obviously I know that. I've been trained to know that. I've got multiple exams and regular developmental training so that I know exactly where people stand, and it's not personal to me. I don't have that anxiety following me around in relation to the situations, and I can look at it with a clear objective head, which it's almost impossible to do when you're the person in that situation. I mean, I know I talk the talk when it comes to my job, but I still make my husband open any letters addressed to me, because the anxiety it just gives me, it might just be a letter from the doctors or a bank statement, but I still get anxious about my own situation. I'm just not for other people.
Which doesn't surprise me at all. I remember during that same recession, they had to reteach staff who were working at, is it Job Centre Plus now? Whatever it was back then, what we call the dole office, okay, that one. But they had to retrain them because there were people coming in £250,000 a year salaries, all of a sudden through that recession with zero. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if you have 10 grand or 100 grand coming in or $1 million, you're going to spend that. And if you don't have that money coming in, you're in debt.
Yeah.
And it's only relative to the amount you've had coming in.
Exactly. And if you've suddenly lost a massive chunk of your income, there's costs that you cut. Adjusting your life to having a significantly lower income can be sometimes near impossible. If you've got a mortgage on a property, you're not entitled to you're entitled to support for mortgage interest, which doesn't cover your mortgage, it covers the interest on your mortgage, and you have to pay it back eventually. Whereas if you're in rented accommodation, you're entitled to housing element or housing benefit. If you've got a mortgage property, you're entitled to almost nothing. I was very lucky. So as I sort of briefly mentioned, I had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma last year. So I was off sick for about a year on chemotherapy, and the only reason we survived financially is because of the fact that CAP actually has a really good sickness policy, which I thank our old CEO for, because otherwise I'd have been in that situation, and I'd be struggling, young child, going through chemotherapy, exhausted, unable to work, but no income. And that's not a choice we made as a family. That's not poor spending. That's not poor choices. That's just life doing what life does. And so I think that gave me a real insight into how stressful it is for people, because at least, going through an incredibly stressful life event, at least the one thing we didn't need to worry about was our finances. They were a bit tighter, but actually we weathered that storm. But for so many people with less security, that don't have savings, that don't have potentially family that can support them, that don't have employers with, good support policies in place, actually all it takes is a health wobble or a bereavement or, mental health problems or something else to go wrong in your life, and there's genuinely, we're not equipped to adjust our situations so quickly. Most people don't know where to turn. They don't know what they're entitled to often. Like, we have a benefits calculator on our website, and so many people don't realise that they're actually entitled to benefits here, there and everywhere, and so haven't even looked into it. I think they talk about, people committing benefit fraud, but actually I think statistically there's more in unclaimed benefits than there are lost in benefit fraud. So there's so many people that don't realise that there's help and support and options out there. So one of the nice things about my job is not only can I give people debt advice, but I can say, oh, did you know that you could apply for discretionary housing payment, or have you asked for your work capability assessment for universal credit, and things that people maybe don't have the knowledge of, but that will help them not just get debt free, but have a more sustainable future once they're debt free. Because we're Christians against poverty, not Christians against debt. We don't want to just see people going debt free and then dropping straight back into the problems and the poverty they were in before. We want to see people, their lives transformed, their finances transformed permanently.
We can't know everything, and there are things that we don't know, and if we don't know them, we don't know what we don't know. And that's like a sort of trite statement, but it's really true. One of the things that we were told very quickly when we made that first phone call was, if anybody comes to your door, which is something you referenced, they come to your door, they don't have a right of access. If you don't allow them in, they're not allowed to get in. And they said, just be careful if they come wearing a suit. And then we had this very nice person in a suit. Oh, can I help you with your shopping? Because Joe just come back from the shops. Somebody give us some money to buy some food. And she said, no, thank you, I'm fine. And she wouldn't let him through the door. But he was very well-to-do, looking very well-spoken, but trying to help her with the shopping into the house, because they said that's a tactic to get in your house. If they get into your house, even if that's dodgy, once they're in your house, well...
How do you prove it? That's exactly the thing. We've had clients invite the bailiffs in for a cup of tea thinking, oh, let's sit down and talk about this, and don't realise how much the law changes once that's happened. We have occasionally, we do get some, for all the bad bailiffs out there, actually we get the nice ones as well. We have had ones where they know that it's a vulnerable person. They'll call in advance and say, I'm attending your property as part of my job, do not let me in. And have forewarned people. We've occasionally had the bailiffs referring clients to us saying, you clearly can't afford to pay this, you need debt help, go to CAP. So as much as, as bailiffs get a bad name, actually sometimes you get some absolute sweeties. I've had a few where they called me about a debt that the client hadn't even told me about, saying, hi, I'm collecting on this debt, do you know about it? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, I'll give you a month and I'll send some paperwork to them. And so, there are really lovely people in the industry out there, which is always nice. And we have our favourites at many. So we have our favourites at the DWP that we speak to, and we used to have a lady at Eon who was our favourite, and we used to, always ask how the weather was on our emails. So you do develop some really nice relationships with the industry as well, which is always lovely. And I think is a misconception as well. Is just because someone's dealing with a bad side of your life doesn't mean that they are intrinsically, not nice people. And sometimes you do get people that are, you suspect, intentionally difficult. But equally, you get lots of really lovely people who are referring people to us. And I think more and more within the industry, you're seeing people that have an understanding of debt and have an understanding of mental health problems and the struggles people are going through. And there does seem to be a very much turn within the industry to safeguarding people's well-being, to understanding vulnerabilities, because I've been here 11 years and I've very much seen that shift. Most of the big enforcement agent companies now have a welfare team, have a relationship with us in some way. Whereas before, I remember about a year in, we had this big old celebration because we'd gotten one enforcement agent company that had agreed a password with us, and they would hold action for 30 days if we called them and we gave our password. And that was just a completely industry blown open. And so it's massively changed over the last 10 years. And I'd say that's in one, I'm not going to say much has improved in the last 10 years, but I'd say the industry's relationship to us probably is the big one that I've really seen that difference in.
I asked this question to Susie, who was somebody who came to CAP having been in debt. You then sent out a decade ago. You then sent out a local lady whose name is Yvette. So I've asked Susie from her perspective of what it was like when you rang up CAP. But if somebody rings up CAP, then it's possible they could get you. In
fact, 3 times today they've gotten me.
There you are.
It's not my department, but they've still managed to somehow get me. So I regularly speak to people where we're the first contact they've had with someone that can bring them hope. And often they sound very ashamed, very guilty, or often the circumstances they're explaining to me are my bread and butter. I think nothing of it, but they think I could never possibly have seen this situation before. Is there any chance we can maybe help them with this, or is it too much? And I'm like, no, that's 60% of our clients you've just described there. That's not a problem. We can help you. Even if for some reason we don't have appointments or we don't have somewhere in your area, there is lots and lots of hope out there. And I think debt puts you into a situation where you feel so isolated and so like you're the only person that could ever possibly be going through this. And so there's so much guilt and so much isolation. And one of the things that people really feel at the end of the phone calls, I find, is just they feel so much lighter. Even just during the process, I had a lady who was calling where her credit card companies were giving her a lot of phone calls, and she was just absolutely terrified. And by the end of it, I managed to explain, actually, their bark is far worse than their bite. Yes, they're going to ring you, yes, they're going to send letters, but it's all in hand. And there's nothing they can realistically do that's going to cause any problems or complications with getting you debt free. And just how much lighter and safer she felt at the end of that phone call, you could just hear it in her voice, and that was absolutely incredible. Is bringing that hope and that relief to people. It's just taking a bit of that load from them, because they've probably got an awful lot else going on in their lives.
It's the rest of life.
Yeah, I mean, debt is a symptom, primarily. I would never say that anyone ever comes to us and debt is the only problem in their life. There will be so many other things that they're trying to juggle, and debt is just making all of those things so much harder.
The question I've asked everybody, and I'm liking this question, I need to ask this more. What gets you out of bed in the morning to want to come and work for CAP when you could be doing other things, you could not come to work, or skip a day, whatever. What makes you want to come into work?
I mean, so I'd say it's sort of twofold. One is I like work. Work is nice. Like, my colleagues are my favourite thing about the day. It's why I don't do work from home, is because I love being in the office. I love the people I work with. We have, most of them are what I would consider just my friends, not just people I work with. So for me, I actually really enjoy my day-to-day job. I enjoy the people I work with. I enjoy the office banter. It's far more like family in the office. We all know each other's lives. One of my colleagues his wife was pregnant at the same time as me, and he said, "Here's my wife's number. You're pregnant, she's pregnant, become friends." And so we did, and now I'm, godmother to his kids. So the other ones. And so, we create actual genuine friendships, and I get to go to work with my friends every single day, and I really love that. I think the second thing is, you see the news every day, and you see how awful life is for so many people, and it can feel so overwhelming and so demotivating, and it just feels like such an insurmountable situation. And in some regards it is. I can't change the benefit system to make people able to live. It's something like £414 and 14 pence you get a month to live on basic universal credit, and you still probably have to pay something to your rent and to your council tax and your gas and your electric and your water and your TV licence and your public transport and your mobile phone, and maybe you've got some food left over at the end, and I can't change that. But actually I can come into work and I can bring hope, and I can change people's lives, and I can actually do something. And I think that's why it's so important to me, is there's so many things you can't change, and it might sometimes almost feel like a drop in the ocean when you go to the BBC News and all the stuff going on in the world, but actually I can change people's worlds. I can bring that hope. I can give someone a good night's sleep. I can help them have enough to feed their family suddenly, or give them that piece of advice that helps turn things around. And so when I first started here, everyone's like, "Oh, your job must be so depressing, seeing all these horrible situations." And I'm like, well, they are horrible situations, but it would only be depressing if I couldn't do anything about them. Yeah. Whereas actually I come into my job, I see people's horrible situations, and some of them are very horrible. There's a lot of people that have suffered, a lot of abuse, or have gone through some really horrible things, have horrible situations at home, have had really unpleasant things done to them, have been treated poorly. But actually I can be that hope, and I can bring that light into people's lives, and not just from an emotional standpoint, because I do bring, emotional relief to people, but also that practical help, that practical advice that so many people need, and can help people it's not just a phone call, it's somewhere that they can go and they can work off of that and really rebuild their life and get themselves into a positive situation. So that's why I go to work, is because there's so many things in the world I can't change, but this is one of the things that I can. And so that's what gets me up in the morning. Well, actually, no, my toddler gets me up in the morning, but after she's in preschool, that's what keeps me up on a morning.
We all have an alarm clock. It might be a dog, it might be a child, it might be a toddler, it might be an actual alarm clock, but yes, there's always a motivation to wake up, isn't there?
Yeah.
Thank you for what you've done and what you're doing here. I've loved being and just meeting people. We've got, it's not even 4 o'clock, we've got more people yet to come, which is brilliant. But I'm just enjoying meeting people, and the way I describe this to everybody so far is, as I walked around earlier, there was just a sense of hope and joy that sort of came out of people. I'm not even sure how you put that into words, but it fuses out. I don't know, whatever the opposite of fuse is. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I think I very much feel that, and I mean, I'm lucky that I've spent most of my working life working here. But you get people that have worked in other industries and other jobs, and they just can't believe the difference in the sort of the culture and the environment here, and how nice people, and how unbackstabby your colleagues are, and how little passive aggressive-ness there is, and it takes some people a while to adjust. I remember when I first started here, I came from teaching, and the fact that if I was sick, I wasn't expected to come into work if I was sick, because you would, like, if you're not in the hospital when you're teaching, you are in work. And I kept getting sent home sick, being like, should you be here? And I'm like, I've got a choice, and actually I think it is a very wonderful place to work, and it's a very enjoyable job to do. And I think if 11 years ago you'd said that I would love a job where I sit at a desk all day staring at spreadsheets and paperwork, I would have laughed my head off. But actually, I really do enjoy my job, and I have had my same very special calculator for 11 years, and it started to malfunction, so I've just been on eBay before coming here trying to see if I can find exactly the same make and model, and it did show as vintage when I found one. So it's remarkable how much I can actually enjoy giving complex financial advice. I would not have expected that to be my cup of tea at all before flipping God got me. You're going to go into youth work, you're going to go into teaching, and then God sidelined me with a copy of CAP's book, nevertheless, like 11 years ago. I'm like, oh, I need to work for this charity. What jobs are going? That advice, I'm sure I could do that. And thankfully I was right.
I love finding out how people get into the place that they are. I love seeing how God can navigate you through the life's issues, and you find yourself thinking, you know what, I don't know how I got here in some ways, but I'm here and I'm loving it, which is brilliant. Thank you, Liz. I'm going to move on. I think we've got some more guests, which I hope.
I can see Katie loitering somewhere.
Katie's loitering. Oh, she's over there. All right, so we'll move on to thank you. It's really appreciate it. And we love being here today. It's such
we've loved having you as well.
Warm place. Thank you.
The June issue of Pure Media, the magazine, comes out on Friday the 7th of June, with a whole host of international writers speaking on life, faith, sports, technology, joy and more from our family to yours. In the June edition, we shine the spotlight on Sherry Seligson, a marine biologist from Florida, and Chris Kerr, who helps us focus and celebrate on dads. Sign up today and enjoy all of this and more at www.puremediathemagazine.com.